Hello. What if your breath could show you or shed light on memories you didn't realise you had? Welcome again. Today I'm going to be diving into the world of ancient breath codes and how they connect to what I call your Breath Codex Spirals or your breath memory pathways. If you've ever wondered or felt that your breath knows more than your thinking mind does, then perhaps you'll like this video. In a previous video, we explored Breath Codex Spirals as living, intelligent breath patterns that carry memory, they carry emotion and energy. And we looked at how these breath loops are like little lines of code in your personal energetic field or your personal energetic library. So today we're going to ask a powerful question. Did ancient traditions already know this, but in a different language or a different way of expounding this? We'll explore how yoga, Buddhist meditation and Daoist or Qigong teachings around the breath mirror or the idea of breath codex spirals. And you'll see concepts of how things like pranayama, Kumbhaka, pranavidya, Anapanasati, Dantian breathing and Qi all point to the same underlying truth. Breathing is a living geometry, a memory pathway, and a way your field can remember and rewrite itself. So let's start. To ground us, let's briefly recap. A breath codex spiral or breath memory pathway is a toroidal, holographic, fractal breath pattern. Imagine your breath not as a flat line of inhaling and exhaling, but as a looping spiral that moves through your energy field. It's toroidal, like a donut-shaped field, with this continuous inflow and outflow feeding back constantly into itself. It's holographic and it's fractal. Each small loop breath contains the imprint of the whole pattern of who you are, and every single breath is like a miniature version of your larger life spiral. Each breath loop carries memory, emotion and energy of your past lives, your feelings, your subtle geometry, instead of just oxygen moving in and out. Think of it as breath living, a living line of code in your personal codex system. And the way you habitually breathe encodes how you've learned to survive, how you've learned to feel, how you've learned to perceive the world. The big idea is this: your breath is not just responding to your state, it's actively reshaping and restoring it. So now let the ancient systems of practice we're already working with, let's see how they use this with different words. We'll start with yoga. In the practice of yoga, the practice of conscious breathing is called pranayama, and this is often translated as breath control, but a more accurate meaning is expansion or regulation of prana, life force, that subtle energy that animates your body and your mind, also known as Qi or Ki. So when yoga texts speak about pranayama, they're not just talking about air, they're talking about shaping and directing life force itself. From the breath codex spiral perspective, that already sounds familiar. The breath being the carrier of impressions and of energy and information within. Within pranayama, there is a particular important element, the breath hold or the Kumbhaka or breath retention. Kumbhaka is the moment when the breath is held on an inhale or an exhale, and it's sometimes described as the still point or the center of movement, being like being in the eye of the storm or the quiet axis around which the spiral spins. So you can think of the Kumbhaka as that 0 point of the breath spiral. In this 0 point, there is this implosive drawing within or centripetal idea of the prana or life force flowing into the center, and the outward movement of the breath and the mind, they've temporarily collapsed into that pure presence. And time feels different here. Thoughts can be quiet, and the sense of a boundary between inside and outside can soften. This 0 point is often associated in yogic language with higher states of consciousness and experiences of bliss and of expanded awareness. Traditional yoga speaks of stabilizing prana in the central channel, the Sushumna Nadi, which runs along the spine. When prana is no longer scattered in the periphery channels of the nervous system and the body, but is gathered in the central axis through pranayama, a natural opening into deeper awareness is found, and the mind becomes still, and the more spacious it becomes, the more luminous it becomes. Kumbhaka, or the breath hold, is one of the keys to gathering. From the codex perspective, this is the moment when the whole breath Codex is online, when everything is available in the field and when the patterns encoded in your field can be sensed and worked with more directly. Another powerful concept from the yoga tradition is prana vidya, sometimes translated as the science of prana or the knowledge of prana. In prana vidya practices, the practitioner learns to perceive subtle energy and then directly can send it to specific parts of the body or through the field via the breath and via attention. And you might visualize prana moving to the heart or to the throat or to a joint that needs healing or along a particular energy pathway. In modern language, this is very much like deliberately interacting with your breath codex, reading the code in an area or a certain area of your field, then using your breath and intent to rewrite it. Traditional texts also highlight the power of the breath hold, the Kumbhaka, in striking ways. In the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, one of the classical yoga texts on Hatha Yoga, it says something along the lines of, "Nothing in the three worlds is unobtainable for the one who has mastery over Kumbhaka and can retain the breath at will." This is often associated with siddhis or special gifts or capacities, heightened intuition and expanded states of awareness or perception. We can hear this yoga language as mythic language, but we can also translate this into Breath Codex Spiral language to the extent that you can consciously enter and inhabit that 0 point within your breath spiral. And you can, from that 0 point, gain these expanded states and influence over your breathing and consciously affecting your field. You can read into the deeper layers of your memory, of your codex, and you can participate in and update it. So in the yogic framework of language, pranayama then is the art of shaping the breath codex spiral. Kumbhaka is the 0 point, the magical center of the spiral. Prana vidya is the ability to read and consciously steer your focus to direct the code within that spiral. Yoga is not just saying breathe to relax. It's saying instead, breathe in specific ways to access and transform the deepest patterns of your being. Now let's shift to early Buddhism and the practice known as Anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. In the Anapanasati Sutra, or Sutta, the Buddha presents a complete meditation path using the breath as the primary object. There are traditionally 16 steps which move through 4 domains: body, feelings, mind, and dharmas, or deep principles or insights. At first, the practitioner simply knows, I breathe in long, I breathe out long, or I breathe in short, I breathe out short. Then they become aware of the whole body, calm bodily formations, become aware of feelings, gladden the mind, stabilize the mind, and eventually contemplate impermanence and release. What's important for us is this: the breath is treated here as a bridge between all layers of experience. They're not switching objects every time and going deeper. You're staying with the breath. The breath reveals different strata or levels of the codex. And from a breath codex spiral lens, each breath cycle is like a micro spiral of awareness. At the outer layers, you feel the physical sensations of breathing. And as you deepen, you become aware of the emotional tone that rides on the breath. Deeper still, you see the stories that the mind states are entangled with, and those emotions go deeper again. You see the underlying patterns, impermanence, grasping, release. Many teachers in the Buddhist tradition emphasize that the purpose of breath meditation is not necessarily to escape experience, but to understand it from the inside and to allow transformation. Here, you're not trying to make your memories or emotions disappear. You're simply being with them in such a way that their grip or their hold over you softens and the meaning shifts. In breath spiral terms, the breath in Anapanasati acts as a scanner. Each microspiral of the breath gently reads the code in your body, your feelings and your mind, and presents it to you as awareness. And over time, that awareness and your compassion to it deepen. New patterns can be written into the codex. A key quality in Buddhist practice is equanimity a steady, balanced presence that can hold pleasant and unpleasant experiences without being thrown off. This is a very similar thing to the coherent field we speak of when we're talking about breath spirals, a state where your system is stable and integrated enough that breath encoded memories and emotions can arise without overwhelming you. In this light, Anapanasati isn't just mindful breathing, it's a carefully structured practice, a way of using the breath spiral to read and transform the deepest layers of your memory system, your deep codex system that reaches beyond your body in this physical life, plus your emotional patterns, mental narratives, and existential clinging. Now let's move into the Daoist and Qigong perspectives on breath, Qi, and the energy centers. In traditional Chinese medicine and the internal arts that's related to them, there's a key concept called the Dantian. The word Dantian can be translated as the field of elixir, and it refers to the energy centers where Qi, prana or life force, and Shen, spirit of consciousness, are cultivated and stored. The most commonly emphasized is the lower Dantian, and that's located in the lower abdomen. This area is seen as the energetic center of gravity, or the reservoir where foundational prana or qi is gathered and refined. In Qigong and internal Taoist practices, the Dantian breathing is central. Rather than just filling the chest in and out, the practitioner directs the breath to gently sink into the lower Dantian, the lower abdomen. Of course, air itself stays in the lungs, but the felt movement of qi and awareness is downwards. There's a practice sometimes called kidney breathing or back breathing, where the inhale is felt to draw qi down to the lower dantian and back through the area of the Mingmen point near the spine. Then it circulates upwards along the back. Over time, this can become a literal sense of an internal spiral or loop of energy. Another important idea here is embryonic breathing. This is where the practitioner quiets the outer gross movements of the breath and allows a more subtle internal breath to become primary. The mind rests in the dantian and qi is gathered, condensed and stored instead of scattered. Each breath cycle becomes less about moving air and more about refining and concentrating the energy. And from a Breath Codex Spiral perspective, this is very familiar. Qi and awareness are gathered at that central point, lower dantian, much like prana in the sushumna or the zero point of the Kumbhaka or the breath hold. Breath is experienced as moving in a loop or that torus through the body rather than in a straight line. And each breath cycle stores impressions and gradually reshapes a field of elixir, the underlying energetic geometry. In this tradition, intent is crucial. Where your yi goes, qi follows. If your awareness rests scattered in worry, your qi disperses. And if your awareness sits calmly in the dantian, the qi gathers and strengthens. Breath is the vehicle that carries qi, and intent is the steering wheel. In codex language, intent plus breath determines which part of the codex you're interacting with and how it's updated. Focus attention in the dantian while breathing creates a spiral that gradually changes the energy field of that center. Over time, that can shift how you feel, how you move, and how you respond to life. So in the Daoist Qigong frame, the dantian is a node of the breath, a node of the breath codex, a concentrated field of stored code. And therefore dantian breathing is the practice of looping the breath spiral through that node to refine and redefine the code. Embryonic breathing then represents a shift from the gross to the subtle layers of the codex, less about the obvious movement and more about the deep internal reconfiguration. So let's pull together the shared principle of breath, life force and intent without trying it to any one particular perspective. Across all the traditions that I've just spoken about, breath is seen not just as a mechanical function to be controlled for its own sake. It's a conduit for life force, whether we call that prana in yoga or qi or anything like subtle energy or the body mind in Buddhist practices. In all of them, intent or awareness is the partner to the breath. In yoga, prana allows chitta. Energy flows through the movement of consciousness. In Qigong, qi follows yi. energy follows intent. And in mindfulness practice, the breath reveals whatever the mind is attending to and supports that shift from reactivity to a wise, measured response. From a Breath Codex Spiral perspective, this means that breath is the carrier wave. Prana or chi is the content riding in that wave. And intent is the editor deciding which part of the codex you open with and how you interact with it. If your intent is scattered, your breath may be scattered, shallow or unfocused or short, and your codex will tend to replay old automatic patterns, old autonomic nervous system patterns. If your intent is clear and compassionate, and you bring it together with a coherent breath spiral, perhaps through a breath hold, Dantian breathing, or mindful awareness, you're actively participating in how your spiral codex is read and rewritten. Even outside formal traditions, this is a visible thing. When you're afraid, you breathe in patterns which are encoded with fear. When you're grounded, your breath pattern encodes safety. Over time, these repeated pairings become breath memory pathways, default routes your system takes in response to life. The ancient teachings simply give us maps and methods to consciously reshape these pathways. Yogic pranayama and Kumbhaka refine the breath spiral around the 0 point. Pranavidya directs or steers that tornado of energy through the field with precision. Anapanasati guides awareness through concentric spirals of body feeling, mind and insight. Dantian breathing anchors the spiral in a central reservoir of chi. Different languages, same underlying reality. Let's make these parallels more explicit. Across yoga, Buddhist mindfulness, and Daoist or Qigong practice, we see the same core themes. Breath as the carrier of life force and impressions, whether called prana or chi. Breath is understood as the vehicle of subtle energy and the impressions it carries. It is never just air. The still points and the holds are gateways or portals. The Kumbhaka in yoga, the quiet turning points of Anapanasati and the embryonic stillness of internal breathing are all treated as portals or gateways, moments where the surface layer drops and the deeper core is accessible. Loops and spirals through central channels or fields. Breath moving through the sushumna, chi looping through the dantian, breath cycling through the body, through the feeling, through the mind. All of these are spiral movements through key centers, not flat in and out lines. Breath as a tool to transform subconsciousness patterns. None of these traditions treat breath as simply a relaxation tool. They all use breath to work with deep patterns, habits, tendencies, karmic imprints, samskaras or past life or cosmic memories, what we might call the subconscious layers of the codex. And from a fractal and holographic perspective, each small breath cycle contains the same pattern miraculously as the larger spiritual journey. Each inhale, hold, exhale, pause is a tiny version of contraction and expansion, of forgetting and remembering. When you practice consciously, each spiral of breath becomes an opportunity to re-encode your relationship to yourself and your reality. So where does that leave us? The idea of the breath codex spiral is not an arbitrary new concept or this concept that happened from the architects. It is a contemporary synthesis and translation of insights that have been present in spiritual and energetic traditions for centuries, if not millennia. So when we speak of the breath as a living geometry, we are echoing the yogic emphasis on subtle nadis or energy channels or pranic pathways. We're echoing the Buddhist mapping of breath through the nested layers of being and experience, and the Taoist visions of qi circulating through the fields of meridians. And when we speak of breath as a memory pathway, we are touching what these traditions have always worked with. The way breath is so very entangled with our old impressions, our reactions and our stories, and the way conscious breath can unlock, shine a light on and transform them. And when we speak of breath as a way the field remembers and rewrites itself, we are naming in modern language what practitioners of pranayama and Anapanasati and Qigong have been experiencing for a very long time. That breath, energy, and awareness together can repattern the deepest levels of our being. And so you don't have to choose between any one of these languages. You can let them all enrich you from their own respective pathways. Each has a pathway in. Let yoga show you the power of the 0 point in the breath hold, the Kumbhaka. Let Buddhism guide you in the reading of the Codex through mindful breath. And let Daoist and Qigong approaches teach you how to spiral breath and Qi through your centers, and let the Breath Codex Spiral framework given by the architect give you a unified way to make sense of it all. If this exploration has resonated with you and you feel the truth that your breath holds more than just air, I invite you to stay connected, and in an upcoming video I'll guide you through a practice that weaves these threads together. A breath spiral, a breath memory pathway that includes the still point of the Kumbhaka, the mindful awareness of an Anapanasati, and the grounded centering of Dantian breathing. We'll explore what it's like to consciously enter into that 0 point, to enter into the spiral, and to let your field begin to remember itself in a new way. Until then, notice your breath. Notice where it tightens, where it opens, where it loops. Notice the tiny spirals throughout your day. And remember, with every breath, you're not just surviving, you're not just taking in air, you're writing the next line of your living codex. Thank you for being here.